Emergency collision. The clock above the nurse's station read 2:47 a.m. when the ambulance call came through. Dr. Natalie Morgan had been on her feet for 9 hours straight, but exhaustion vanished the moment she heard the words, "motorcycle accident, critical condition, 5 minutes out." Natalie pushed her auburn hair back from her face with both hands, each finger moving with practiced efficiency as she secured it into a tight ponytail. At 31, she'd been an emergency room physician at City General Hospital for 6 years, and she'd learned to run on adrenaline and coffee in equal measure. "Trauma Bay 2, she called to her team, snapping on latex gloves. "I want full blood work, cross-match for transfusion, and get radiology standing by." The automatic doors burst open with a rush of October wind. 2 paramedics wheeled in a gurney, carrying a man in his mid-30s, his leather jacket torn and blood-soaked. His face was partially obscured by an oxygen mask, but Natalie could see the strong jawline, dark hair matted with blood, and the expensive watch on his wrist that somehow remained intact despite the obvious trauma. "Male, approximately 35 years old," the lead paramedic reported as they rushed toward the trauma bay. "Lost control of his motorcycle on the highway, impact with guardrail. Unconscious at scene, GCS of 8, BP dropping, suspected internal bleeding." Natalie's trained eyes assessed the patient as they transferred him to the hospital bed. She placed her hands on his chest, feeling for rib fractures, her 5 fingers on each hand moving with gentle precision despite the urgency. His breathing was shallow, his skin pale and clammy. "Pupils?" she asked, leaning over him to check his eyes with her penlight. "Sluggish but reactive," her resident, Dr. Chen, reported. Natalie lifted the patient's eyelids carefully, her own brown eyes focused with intense concentration. Beneath her fingers, she felt his pulse, rapid and thready. Not good. "Get me an ultrasound," she ordered. "I need to see what we're dealing with internally." The next 20 minutes were a controlled symphony of medical expertise. Natalie worked with fierce determination, her 2 arms moving constantly, inserting IV lines, ordering medications, interpreting scan results. The ultrasound revealed internal bleeding in his abdomen. He needed surgery immediately. "OR is prepped and ready," a nurse called out. "Let's move him," Natalie said. But as they began to transfer the patient, his hand suddenly caught her wrist. Not hard, but deliberate. His eyes opened, a striking shade of blue-gray that seemed to focus on her face with surprising clarity given his condition. "You," he whispered, his voice barely audible through the oxygen mask. "Angel." Then his grip loosened, and he lost consciousness again. "Heart rate's dropping," Dr. Chen called out. "We're losing him," Natalie said, her professional calm masking the sudden urgency she felt. "Move, now." The surgery lasted 4 hours. Natalie stood at the operating table, her 2 legs aching, her back protesting, but her hands remained steady as she repaired the lacerated spleen and stopped the internal bleeding. Her fingers, all 10 of them, worked with meticulous precision, suturing tissue, cauterizing vessels, saving a life. When she finally closed the last incision, she looked up at the clock, 6:15 in the morning. The patient was stable. Against considerable odds, he was going to survive. In the recovery room, as Natalie checked his vitals one more time, a man in an immaculate charcoal suit rushed in. He was in his 40s, with graying temples and an air of barely controlled panic. "Is he alive?" asked the man, his eyes fixed on the patient. "Yes," Natalie said calmly. "He's stable. The surgery was successful. Are you family?" "Victor Reese, Mr. Kane's executive assistant," the man said, relief flooding his features. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands. "I need to notify the board immediately. Thank God he's all right." "Mr. Kane?" Natalie asked, making a note on her chart. "Adrian Kane. Kane Technologies, the automotive innovation company. He's the founder and CEO." Natalie glanced at the unconscious man in the hospital bed. So he wasn't just wealthy, he was one of those tech billionaires she occasionally read about in the business section. It explained the designer clothes and the expensive motorcycle.
"Well, Mr. Reese, your Mr. Kane is very lucky. Another 30 minutes and he wouldn't have made it. He'll need to stay here for at least a week and then several weeks of recovery at home. No stress, no work." Victor looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Natalie's expression stopped him. "Of course, doctor, whatever he needs. Money is no object. We'll get him a private suite, private nurses, whatever." "He doesn't need special treatment," Natalie interrupted firmly. "He needs rest and proper medical care, which he'll receive regardless of his bank account. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have other patients to attend to." She turned to leave, but Victor called after her. "Doctor, I didn't get your name." "Dr. Morgan," Natalie said without turning around. Natalie Morgan. As she walked away, she didn't see Adrian Kane's eyes flutter open briefly, or the way his gaze followed her retreating figure with something like wonder.
Later that morning, after her shift ended, Natalie returned to check on her overnight patients. Adrian Kane was awake, sitting up slightly in his bed. The color had returned to his face, and those blue-gray eyes were alert and focused. "Dr. Morgan," he said as she entered, his voice stronger now. "Victor told me you saved my life." "I did my job," Natalie replied, checking his chart. "How are you feeling? Any pain?" "Some," he admitted, "but manageable. I wanted to thank you properly. Victor mentioned you worked on me for hours." Natalie met his gaze directly, her brown eyes professional but not unkind. "Like I said, I was doing my job. I'm glad you're recovering well, Mr. Kane." "Please, call me Adrian." He smiled, and Natalie noticed it was a genuine smile, reaching his eyes and transforming his entire face. "And I know you were doing your job, but that doesn't make me any less grateful. When I woke up during the accident, when they were loading me into the ambulance, I was certain I was dying. Then I woke up in your trauma bay, saw your face, and thought you were an angel." Natalie felt her cheeks warm slightly. "You were in shock and heavily medicated. People say all sorts of things." "Maybe," Adrian said, his eyes not leaving hers, "but I meant it. You gave me my life back, Dr. Morgan. That's not something I'll forget." There was an intensity in the way he looked at her that made Natalie's pulse quicken. She told herself it was just a patient's gratitude, nothing more. But something in those blue-gray eyes suggested this was more complicated than simple appreciation. "Rest, Mr. Kane," she said, stepping back toward the door. "Follow your recovery protocol and you'll be back to normal in no time." "Adrian," he corrected gently. "And will you be checking on me again?" "I'm sure one of the other doctors will handle your follow-up care." "I'd prefer you." Natalie paused at the door, her hand on the frame. "I work emergency medicine, Mr. Kane. Once patients are stable, they move to other departments." "Then I guess I'll have to find a way to remain your patient," Adrian said with that same disarming smile. Natalie shook her head slightly, fighting her own smile. "Try not to have any more motorcycle accidents. Doctor's orders." As she left the room, she could feel his eyes on her back, and despite every professional instinct telling her to maintain proper boundaries, Natalie found herself hoping she'd see him again. You had no idea that Adrian Kane had made his fortune by going after what he wanted with single-minded determination, and what he wanted now, more than anything, was to know the woman who had saved his life. Adrian Kane was discharged after 6 days, but that wasn't the end of Natalie's encounters with him. It was the beginning. The flowers arrived first, a modest bouquet of sunflowers with a simple card. "Thank you for my second chance, Adrian." Natalie smiled despite herself and placed them in the break room. Then came the donation. Victor Reese appeared at the hospital administration office with a check for $500,000 to the emergency department, designated for new equipment. When the hospital director personally thanked Natalie, she immediately called the number on Adrian's business card. "I can't accept this," she said when he answered. "You didn't accept anything. I made a donation to a hospital that saved my life, completely separate from my gratitude to a particular doctor." "Adrian, have coffee with me.
Just coffee, that's all I'm asking." Natalie hesitated, her fingers tapping against her desk. This was crossing a line, but he was no longer her patient, and it was just coffee. "One coffee, that's all," she said. They met at a small cafe near the hospital 3 days later. Adrian arrived in casual clothes, jeans, and a navy sweater that made his eyes even more striking. He stood when she approached, and Natalie noticed he moved carefully, still healing from his injuries. "You're supposed to be resting," she said as they sat down. "I am resting, sitting, drinking coffee. Very restful." Adrian smiled. "Tell me about yourself, Natalie. And I don't want to hear about medical school or your residency. Tell me something real." So she did. They talked for an hour about her childhood in Portland, about how she'd wanted to be a marine biologist before discovering her calling in medicine, about her small apartment filled with too many books and not enough furniture. In return, Adrian told her about building Kane Technologies from nothing, starting in his garage after dropping out of MIT, about working 18-hour days for years, sacrificing everything for success. "My parents died when I was 23, car accident. After that, work was all I had. Building something, creating something. It gave me purpose when I had nothing else." Natalie reached across the table, her hand covering his. "I'm sorry," she said. Adrian looked at their joined hands, then at her face. "For years, the company was enough, but lately, I've been wondering what I'm building it all for. Then I woke up in that hospital room and saw you, and remembered there are people who do things that actually matter." "You matter," Natalie said softly. "Your company employs thousands of people. You're developing electric vehicle technology that could change the world." "Maybe, but you save lives every day." His fingers intertwined with hers. "That's real impact." One coffee became 2, then 3. They started meeting regularly, always at quiet places, always keeping it casual. Natalie told herself they were just friends, but her racing heart whenever she saw him suggested otherwise. After a month, Adrian asked her to dinner, a real dinner at a restaurant that required reservations weeks in advance. "Adrian, I don't know. Your world is so different from mine. I work overnight shifts and live on a residence budget." "I don't care about any of that. I care about you. Please, Natalie, give me a chance." She said yes. The restaurant was elegant without being ostentatious. Adrian had reserved a private corner table, and they talked for hours. When he reached across the table to take her hand, Natalie didn't pull away. "I've been thinking about you since the moment I woke up in that trauma bay," Adrian admitted. "It's fast. I know it's complicated, but I've never felt this way about anyone." "I'm scared," Natalie confessed. "Your world is so public. I'm just a doctor trying to make a difference. I don't know how to navigate your world." Adrian stood and moved to Natalie's side of the table, his 2 hands cupping her face gently. "You're not just anything. You're extraordinary, and my world needs more people like you." When he kissed her, soft and gentle, Natalie felt something click into place. This was right. He was right. They began dating, though Natalie insisted on keeping it private. She wasn't ready for the scrutiny that came with dating someone like Adrian Kane. He agreed, though she could tell he wanted to show her off to the world. For 6 weeks, it was perfect. Stolen dinners at quiet restaurants, morning walks before her shifts, late-night phone calls that lasted until sunrise. Natalie had never been happier. Then the first message arrived.
The note was slipped under Natalie's apartment door on a Tuesday morning. Plain white paper, typed letters. "Stay away from Adrian Kane. You don't belong in his world. This is your only warning." Natalie's hands shook as she read it. She told herself it was nothing, probably some jealous ex or obsessive fan. She didn't tell Adrian. The second message came 4 days later, left on her car windshield at the hospital. "Leave him before you get hurt. Final warning." This time, she called Adrian. He was at her apartment within 15 minutes, his face dark with fury as he read both notes. "I'm calling my security team," he said, pulling out his phone. "This is a threat. We need to take it seriously." "Adrian, it's probably just some—" "It's not nothing," Adrian interrupted, his blue-gray eyes intense. "There are people who would use you to get to me, Natalie. Competitors, corporate rivals. I should have thought about this, should have protected you better." "Protected me from what?" Natalie asked, fear creeping into her voice. Adrian sat beside her, taking both her hands in his. "Kane Technologies is worth billions. I've made enemies, powerful people who want to see me fail. Lucas Mercer runs Velocity Motors, my biggest competitor. He's been trying to destroy my company for years." "Are you saying I'm in danger because of you?" "I'm saying I won't let anyone hurt you," Adrian said fiercely. "I'll hire bodyguards, increase security." "I don't want to live like that," Natalie protested. "I'm a doctor. I need to be able to move freely, to help patients." "Then we end this," Adrian said quietly, though pain filled his eyes. "You walk away, stay safe. I'd understand." Natalie felt anger flash through her. "Is that what you want?" "God, no. But I want you safe more than I want you with me." "Then we fight, together. I'm not running, Adrian. Not from this, not from us." Adrian pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "I love you," he whispered against her hair. "I know it's fast, but I love you, Natalie." "I love you too," she whispered back. The threats continued. Strange cars outside her apartment, hang-up calls at odd hours. Adrian hired discreet security, but Natalie hated feeling watched. Then Adrian's company began experiencing problems, business deals mysteriously falling through, leaked information about upcoming projects. Someone was targeting him with increasingly aggressive tactics. "We need to go public with our relationship," Adrian said one evening at his penthouse. "If people know we're together, it might stop some of this." "Or make it worse," Natalie countered. "Either way, I'm tired of hiding. I want the world to know you're mine." They went public at a technology industry gala. Adrian introduced Natalie as his girlfriend, his arm protective around her waist. Cameras flashed, reporters called questions, but Adrian kept her close. That weekend, he took her to his lake house upstate, just the two of them, away from the city and the threats and the pressure. They spent 2 days wrapped in each other, talking and laughing and making love under the stars. "Marry me," Adrian said suddenly, on their last night, as they lay tangled together in bed. Natalie propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him with wide eyes. "What?" "Not now, not today, but someday, when this is all over and we're safe. Marry me, Natalie. Build a life with me." She kissed him, deep and passionate. Yes, someday, yes. But someday would have to wait, because Lucas Mercer was about to make his most dangerous move yet. The medical charity gala was supposed to be safe, a fundraiser for children's hospitals, the kind of event Natalie actually enjoyed. She wore an emerald green dress Adrian had chosen, simple but elegant. They mingled with doctors, philanthropists, and business leaders. Adrian kept his hand on the small of her back, introducing her proudly. For a few hours, everything felt normal. Then, Natalie saw Adrian stumble slightly. "Adrian?" she said quietly, touching his arm. "I'm fine," he said, but his voice sounded strange, just dizzy. Then his knees buckled. Natalie caught him as he fell, her medical training taking over instantly. People screamed around them, but she was already lowering him to the floor, checking his pulse with her fingers, his breathing. "Call an ambulance, now!" Adrian's eyes were unfocused, his skin clammy and pale. Natalie recognized the symptoms immediately. Poison. Someone had poisoned him. "Stay with me," she whispered, holding his face between her hands. "Adrian, stay with me." His lips moved. "Love you." Then his eyes closed. The ambulance ride was a blur. Natalie stayed with Adrian, monitoring his vitals, barking orders to the paramedics. At City General, she pulled rank shamelessly, demanding to be his attending physician despite the conflict of interest. "It's poison," she told the toxicology team. "Based on symptoms, likely ricin or similar. We need full blood work and start chelation therapy immediately." For 3 days, Adrian drifted in and out of consciousness, while Natalie worked frantically to keep him alive. She barely slept, barely ate, her focus entirely on keeping him alive. On the 4th day, he woke up. "Natalie," he whispered, his hand finding hers. "You scared me. Don't you ever do that again." "Not planning on it," he said weakly. Then his expression hardened. "It was Lucas, wasn't it?" Victor appeared in the doorway. "His assistant tampering with your drink. Police have arrested both of them. They're gathering evidence now." "He tried to kill you. Adrian, this has to stop." "It will," Adrian promised. "Lucas made a mistake. He went too far, and now he'll pay for it." But that night, another message arrived on Natalie's phone. "He survived this time. You won't be so lucky. L.M."